You know, recommendation algorithms are pretty much the invisible architects of our digital lives, right? They're deciding the music you hear, the news you read, the videos you watch. I mean, they're literally everywhere. But have you ever stopped to think why your TikTok feed feels like it's, I don't know, reading your mind, while some other app just keeps feeding you the same old boring stuff? Well, the answer isn't magic. It's actually this really complex balancing act that's happening just behind the screen. All right, so let's pull back the curtain a little bit. Every single one of these platforms faces this massive dilemma. They're trying to figure out what you like based on, honestly, very little info. Your clicks, your likes, it's all just a bunch of noisy data. And to make any sense of it, they have to make a really fundamental choice. And that choice, that's what's known as the bias variance trade-off. It's a classic concept in machine learning, kind of like a master control dial. On one side, you can turn it up to stable and general. We call that high bias. On the other side, you can crank it down to super personalized but kind of chaotic. That's high variance. And the tool they use to turn this dial is a technique called regularization. Okay, the best way to think about this is with a barista. Imagine a high bias barista. This person learns you like coffee, and so every single day, they just hand you a standard latte. It's safe, right? It's never going to be terrible, but man, is it boring. Now picture a low bias barista. They overhear you mention cinnamon just once, and suddenly they go wild, making you all these creative, sometimes just bizarre cinnamon-based drinks. It's super personalized, but it's risky, and a lot of the time, it's just going to be wrong. So you can see the problem, right? It's all about finding that perfect balance. And for years, that was pretty much the whole story. Tune the dial, find the balance, call it a day. But what if the coffee beans themselves had an opinion? What if they were actively competing to be in your drink, to get your attention? Well, that's the fascinating question this new research dives into, and it uncovers this huge, missing piece of the puzzle. And that missing piece? It's the strategic creator. Yeah, the actual people making the YouTube videos, the TikToks, the music. They aren't just passive items on a shelf, like books in a library. No way. They are active players in this game. They want to get recommended, and they are constantly, strategically changing what they make to please the algorithm. So what you get is this incredible dynamic feedback loop. The platform sets the algorithm, the creators then adapt their content to win at that algorithm, which in turn changes the entire content landscape. And that forces the platform to react all over again. It's this constant dance, this co-evolution. It's nothing like a static library of old movies, that's for sure. And this all leads us to the central question of this research, the big mystery they wanted to solve. When you have creators actively competing for your eyeballs, how does that totally change the platform's original dilemma? Should it stick with the safe, predictable latte? Or should it embrace the risky, personalized cinnamon surprise? So, to figure this out, the researchers basically built a digital laboratory. They designed this sophisticated model to run a big experiment, comparing two totally different scenarios. This allowed them to isolate the exact effect of creator competition. Okay, so in one corner of this digital lab, they built a non-strategic world. This is like, say, Netflix's back catalog of movies. The content is what it is, it's fixed, the algorithm's only job is to find the best match for you. But in the other corner, they built a strategic world. This is much more like the reality of TikTok or YouTube, where creators are constantly tweaking, changing, and adapting your content specifically to get recommended. And the goal of this whole experiment was pretty simple, really. For each of these two worlds, they wanted to find the perfect setting on that bias variance dial. Find the exact level of regulation that leads to the highest total user welfare. Or, to put it simply, what makes us, the users, the happiest? And the results? Well, they were absolutely fascinating. Because adding creator competition to the mix didn't just tweak the old rules, it completely flipped them on their head. So, first, let's look at the baseline. The world with no competing creators. In that world, a higher bias setting, so a safer, more general algorithm, was often the winner. And the reason is pretty interesting. It's because of something called the homogenizing effect. The algorithm basically nudges everyone toward the same popular, trendy stuff. It's a safe bet, It avoids recommending something weird that you might hate. But the moment you add strategic creators into the mix, well, everything changes. What the research found was that in this competitive world, the best strategy is completely different. And this is the core finding right here. Platforms can actually make users way happier by lowering the bias and leaning into personalization. The creator competition itself creates the perfect conditions for a more personalized approach to win out. For everyone.
The paper itself puts it really clearly. It says creator competition, and I'm quoting here, shifts the platform's optimal policy toward weaker regularization, thereby favoring lower bias. So, to go back to our coffee shop, this means the platform should actually encourage the barista to make those creative, sometimes chaotic cinnamon drinks. Why? Because the creators, the coffee beans in this case, will actually adapt and start producing exactly the kinds of niche flavors that you're going to absolutely love.
Okay, so this is all really cool theory, right? But what does it actually mean for you, for your feed? How does this invisible battle between algorithms and creators shape what you see every single day when you're scrolling? All right, let's break down the big takeaways. First, this competition between creators is what forces platforms like TikTok to get so good at personalization. It's not an accident. Second, this is great news because it fights that homogenizing effect, where everyone just sees the same top trending videos over and over. It encourages real variety. And what this research suggests is that for platforms like YouTube and TikTok, a more niche-friendly algorithm isn't just some nice-to-have feature. It's actually the best strategy to make all of us happier. And finally, and this is a big one, picking the best algorithm isn't just a technical choice. It's a huge policy decision that shapes the entire ecosystem, the entire culture of a platform. So next time you're scrolling and you come across a video that feels like it was made just for you, remember the incredible, complex dance that brought it to your screen. It's this constant co-evolution, this feedback loop between the platform's code and the creativity of real people, which of course leaves us with one last big question to chew on. In this ever-changing digital world, who's really in charge of your feed? Is it the platform, the creators, or maybe is it you?